The surgery took 9 hours. When I opened my eyes, the first thing I saw wasn't a doctor, but 87 missed calls. My dad's voicemail was casual, telling me they sold my $425,000 condo while I was under anesthesia. They called it a family decision. I call it theft. Now, all it takes is one phone call to turn their celebration into the day they lose everything. My name is Riley Jenkins. I am 35 years old, and the first thing I realized when I woke up was that my throat felt like I had swallowed a handful of broken glass. The second thing I realized was that my lower back, the site of the 9-hour fusion surgery I had just survived, felt less like a part of my body and more like a construction site where the crew had gone on strike and left all their heavy machinery sitting on top of my nerves. I tried to inhale, but the air in the recovery room was sterile and cold, stinging my lungs. My eyelids felt heavy, weighted down by the thick, cloying fog of general anesthesia that was slowly lifting, leaving behind a headache that throbbed in rhythm with the heart monitor beeping beside me. I blinked, trying to bring the blurry ceiling tiles into focus. A face appeared above me. It was a nurse, her expression a mix of professional sympathy and mild alarm. She wasn't looking at my eyes, though. She was looking at the bedside table. "Ms. Jenkins," she said softly, "you're awake. That's good. Your vitals are stable." She hesitated, biting her lip. "I know you just came out of a major procedure, but your phone, it has been vibrating off the hook for the last 2 hours. We were worried it might be an emergency regarding your medical proxy, but since you are awake now..." She reached over and handed me the device. It felt unnaturally heavy in my hand, my fingers still trembling from the residual drugs in my system. I brought the screen closer to my face, squinting against the harsh backlight. 87 missed calls. My stomach dropped, a sensation entirely separate from the nausea of the anesthesia. 87 calls in the span of a 9-hour surgery. Panic flared in my chest, sharp and immediate. Had something happened to Sienna? Had Dad had a heart attack? Was the house in Georgia on fire? I unlocked the screen with a shaking thumb. The notifications cascaded down like a digital avalanche. They were not from the hospital. They were not from the police. They were from my mother, my father, my sister Sienna, and 3 aunts I had not spoken to since Christmas. I saw the texts first. A wall of blue bubbles from my mother. "Call us immediately. Riley, pick up the phone. It is done. Don't make a scene. We did what was best for the family. Answer your father." My heart hammered against my ribs, painful and erratic. I scrolled past the frantic demands to the voicemail notification. There was only one new message, left 40 minutes ago by my father. "Dale." I pressed the speaker button, my hand resting on the thin hospital blanket. The nurse, sensing the tension, took a step back, pretending to check the IV bag, but I knew she was listening. "Riley." My father's voice filled the small space between the bed rails. He did not sound frantic. He did not sound like someone reporting a tragedy. He sounded calm. He sounded practical. The way he sounded when he told me he had found a good deal on a new refrigerator, or that he had decided to switch cable providers. "I know you are probably groggy, so listen carefully," his voice continued, steady and unbothered. "Your mother and I handled the situation with the condo. We sold the Clearwater unit this morning. The buyer was ready with cash, $425,000, and we couldn't wait for you to wake up to sign the closing papers. So, we went ahead and took care of it. You are in surgery, so obviously you couldn't sign. So we signed for you. It is a done deal. We will explain everything when you are discharged. Focus on healing." The message ended with a mechanical click. I stared at the phone. The words floated in the air, refusing to land. We sold the Clearwater unit. We signed for you, my condo, my $425,000 condo, the one I had bought with my own bonuses, my own savings, my own credit score, the one deeded in my name, and my name alone. I did not cry. People think that when your life is dismantled in a matter of seconds, you break down. You don't. You freeze. It is a biological defense mechanism. If you do not move, maybe the predator will not see you. If you do not react, maybe the reality will fail to set in. My brain was trying to process the legal impossibility of what I had just heard, while my heart was already miles ahead, understanding exactly what had happened. They waited. They knew the surgery schedule. They knew exactly when I would be unconscious, helpless, and unable to answer a phone call from a title company or a bank. Another text buzzed against my palm. It was my mother again. "Stop ignoring us. Don't be selfish. Riley, this is a matter of family honor. Sienna needs this. Selfish." The word cut through the anesthesia fog like a scalpel. I had spent the last decade paying my own way, staying out of debt, and fixing their mistakes from the shadows, and I was the selfish one. I lay there, the pain in my back radiating down to my legs, a dull, grinding fire. I had delayed this surgery for 2 years because I was afraid of the cost, afraid of taking time off work, afraid of being vulnerable. And the moment I finally allowed myself to be vulnerable, the moment I closed my eyes, they picked my pockets. I tried to sit up. The pain was blinding. It felt like someone had taken a sledgehammer to my lumbar spine. My vision went white at the edges, and a gasp tore from my throat. The nurse rushed forward. "Ms. Jenkins, please, you need to lie flat," she urged, reaching for my shoulders. I wheezed, pushing her hands away with more strength than I thought I possessed. "I need to make a call." I dialed my father. He answered on the first ring. He did not ask how the surgery went. He did not ask if I was in pain. "Finally," he said, "your mother was getting worried you were going to be dramatic about this." Dramatic? My voice was a croak. Dry and broken, I swallowed, forcing moisture into my throat. "You sold my house. Dad, you sold my house while I was cut open on an operating table." "We reallocated an asset. Riley," he corrected me, his tone condescending, as if he were explaining simple addition to a toddler. "You will understand once the anesthesia wears off. The family needed liquidity urgently. Sienna's gala is next week, and the Crowley family expects a certain level of contribution. We could not show up empty-handed. We had to make a decision." "It wasn't your decision to make," I whispered, my knuckles turning white around the phone case. "It is my property. My name is on the deed." "And we are your parents," he shot back, the calmness slipping just enough to reveal the entitlement underneath. "We raised you. We fed you. Everything you have is because we set you up for success. Now, when the family is in a pinch, you want to talk about technicalities? We have the check. Riley, it is done." He sounded like he had won a chess match he had been playing against me without my knowledge. He sounded proud of his maneuvering. I closed my eyes, the white hospital room spinning behind my eyelids. The betrayal was a physical weight, heavier than the lead apron they used for x-rays. But through the pain, through the shock, a single, razor-sharp thought emerged. It was the only thing that mattered. "Dad," I said. I kept my voice low. I did not scream. I did not curse. "You said you signed for me." "We did," he said, dismissive. "Like I said, you were incapacitated." "I did not give you power of attorney," I said. "I did not sign a listing agreement. I did not sign a closing disclosure. We have ways of handling things. Riley, don't worry about the paperwork. It is all official." "No," I said. "It isn't." There was a pause on the line. It was brief, but it was there. It was the silence of a man who realized, for a split second, that he might have underestimated the person on the other end of the line, but his arrogance was a thick shield. "Stop it, Riley," he snapped. "You are being ungrateful. We will transfer a portion of the funds to you once the gala is over and Sienna is settled. We are not leaving you with nothing. But right now, the money is committed." "Who signed my name?" I asked. "What? Who signed my name? Dad?" I repeated, enunciating every syllable. "Because unless you dragged my unconscious body to a notary public in the last 9 hours, that signature is not mine." The silence on the other end of the line stretched out. This time, it was heavy. It was loaded. He didn't answer immediately. He didn't have a glib comeback. "It is a family matter," he finally said, his voice dropping an octave, losing its triumphant edge and becoming something darker. "Don't you dare try to ruin this for your sister. If you call anyone, if you try to embarrass us before this wedding, you are no daughter of ours." "You forged my signature," I said. It wasn't a question anymore. It was a statement of fact. "We did what was necessary," he said, and then he hung up. The line went dead. I lowered the phone slowly to my lap. The screen went black, reflecting my own face back at me. I looked pale, ghostly, with dark circles under my eyes and a hospital gown bunched around my neck. I looked like a victim. I looked like someone who had just lost nearly $500,000 and the only sanctuary she had ever built for herself. The nurse was staring at me, her eyes wide. She had heard enough to know this wasn't a standard post-op family check-in. "Ms. Jenkins, do you want me to get the doctor? Or security?" I looked at her, but I didn't really see her. I was seeing the condo in Clearwater. I was seeing the morning light hitting the balcony where I drank my coffee. I was seeing the desk where I worked late nights to pay the mortgage. I was seeing the space that was mine, the only place where I didn't have to be Sienna's sister or Dale and Marlene's bank account. They thought they had stripped me bare. They thought that because I was in a hospital bed, unable to walk, unable to drive, unable to run, that I was powerless. They thought the money was already theirs to spend on champagne towers and designer dresses for a sister who had never worked a day in her life. They were wrong. I felt the pain in my back again, sharp and insistent. But this time, I welcomed it. It cleared my head. It gave me a focal point. I looked up at the sterile white tiles of the hospital ceiling. I took a deep breath, ignoring the burn in my lungs. "No," I whispered to the empty air, my voice gaining a terrifying kind of steadiness. "I don't need security." I gripped the phone tighter. "They signed my name," I said, more to myself than to the nurse. "Okay, if they want to play with signatures, fine." I remembered the lawyer I had met once at a networking event, a shark named Grant Holloway who specialized in property fraud. I remembered the file labeled Harbor Lint Holdings on my laptop at home. I remembered exactly how leverage worked. "I will sign too," I murmured, a cold resolve settling over me like a second skin. "But I will sign in a way they will never be able to erase." To understand why the air leaving my lungs felt so cold, you have to understand that the condo in Clearwater was never just a piece of real estate. To my father, it was a line item on a spreadsheet. To my mother, it was a resource to be harvested. But to me, that 1,200 square feet of drywall and laminate flooring was the only evidence I had that I actually existed. I bought it 5 years ago. It was not on the beach. It did not have marble countertops or a smart fridge that could order groceries for you. It was a second-floor unit in a complex built in the late 90s, overlooking a parking lot and a sliver of the intracoastal waterway if you craned your neck at exactly the right angle. But the day I signed the deed, my hand shaking so hard I nearly dropped the pen, I cried in my car for 20 minutes. It was the first time in my life I had a key to a door that Dale and Marlene Jenkins could not legally unlock. Growing up in the Jenkins household meant understanding a very specific, unspoken hierarchy. There was the sun, which was my sister Sienna. Then there were the planets orbiting her, which were my parents. And then there was me, the dark matter out on the periphery, necessary for gravity to work, but otherwise invisible. Sienna was the golden child. Literally and figuratively, she had the blonde ringlets, the winning smile, the ability to charm a room just by walking into it. I was the practical one, the sturdy one, the one who did the homework and cleaned up the confetti after Sienna's parties. My parents poured everything into her. The vocal coaches, the pageant fees, the private liberal arts college where she majored in communications, but mostly minored in social climbing. I was told to be realistic. When I wanted to go to an out-of-state university, my father sat me down and explained that the family resources were currently tied up in Sienna's modeling portfolio. So I would need to take out loans or go to community college. I did both. I worked nights at a diner while studying, dragging myself through a degree in computer science because I knew it was the fastest way to a paycheck that could buy my freedom. That brings me to Marrow Peak Solutions. I have been a product manager at Marrow Peak for 7 years. It is not a glamorous job. It involves 12-hour days, endless meetings with developers who hate marketing, and marketing teams who do not understand code. It means eating lunch at my desk and answering emails at 3 in the morning. But it pays. It pays well, and every single dollar in my bank account was a dollar I fought for. There is a specific memory that plays on a loop in my head whenever I think about my family and money. It was 3 years ago. I had just been promoted to senior product manager. It was a massive leap, one that came with a 20% raise and significant stock options. I was bursting with pride. I felt valid. I felt seen. I called my mother, desperate for that approval I had been chasing since I was 6 years old. "Mom, I got it," I had said, breathless. "I got the senior role. They are putting me in charge of the entire enterprise software division." There was a pause on the line, the sound of her shuffling papers in the background. "That is nice, Riley," she said, her voice distracted. "That means you have a bit of extra cash flow then, right?" My stomach tightened. "Well, I will eventually, but—" "Perfect timing," she cut in. "Sienna found this venue for her birthday bash, but they require a non-refundable deposit by 5 o'clock today, and your father is tied up in a meeting. Can you wire $500 to her account? We will pay you back next week." They never paid me back. They never even asked about the new job again. The promotion was not a milestone to be celebrated. It was just a notification that the family ATM had received an upgrade. Sienna does not work. Not really. She calls herself a lifestyle consultant or an influencer. Depending on the day, she lives off appearances. Her life is a carefully curated feed of brunches, charity galas, and vacations she does not pay for. She dates men like Miles Crowley because they validate her existence. She needs to be looked at to feel real. I, on the other hand, lived in the shadows of my own life. And that shadows is where the back pain started. It began as a dull ache in my lower lumbar region, the result of spending 14 hours a day in an office chair. I ignored it. I ignored it because I was terrified of stopping. In my mind, if I stopped working, the money stopped. If the money stopped, the independence stopped. And if the independence stopped, I would have to go back to them. I would have to ask for help. So I pushed through. I bought ergonomic cushions. I stood during meetings. I took ibuprofen like they were mints. I spent weekends lying flat on the floor of my condo, staring at the popcorn ceiling, waiting for the spasms to pass so I could get up on Monday and do it all again. By the time I saw a specialist, the damage was severe. 2 vertebrae were grinding against each other. The disc between them disintegrated. The surgeon told me I needed a fusion. He told me it was not elective. It was mandatory if I wanted to walk when I was 40. He told me the recovery would be brutal. 6 weeks minimum, no driving, no lifting, constant care for the first few days. That was when the fear truly set in. Not the fear of the scalpel, but the fear of the logistics. I was 35 years old, successful, a homeowner, and I had no one to drive me home from the hospital. I delayed the surgery for 6 months. I told myself I was too busy at work, but the truth was, I was trying to work up the courage to make the call. Finally, 4 weeks ago, I called my parents. "I need surgery," I told them. "It is scheduled for the 30th. It is pretty major. I will need someone to pick me up and maybe stay with me for the first 2 nights, just to help me get water and medication." I waited. I actually let myself hope. I thought that surely, stripped of money and status, stripped down to just flesh and blood and pain, the basic instinct of parenthood would kick in. "The 30th?" my mother asked, her tone sharp. "Riley, you know that is the week before the spring gala. Sienna is a co-chair this year. We are swamped with the auction items. I can't walk." "Mom," I said, my voice trembling, "I am in constant pain." "Well, Can't you reschedule? She asked. Maybe for the summer? It would be much more convenient for us. Convenient. My spinal stability was inconvenient for their social calendar. I can't reschedule, I said. The doctor says it is urgent. Well, she sighed, the sound of a martyr being asked to carry a heavy cross. We simply cannot do it. Riley, Sienna needs us here. You are an adult. Surely you have friends. Or you can hire a service. You have that good job. After all, that was the moment the last thread snapped. It wasn't a loud snap. It was quiet. It was the sound of a door closing and locking forever. Right, I said. I have a good job. I will figure it out. And I did. I did what I have always done. I threw money at the problem so I wouldn't have to feel the lack of love. I hired a medical transport service to pick me up. I hired a home health aide named Brenda, a stranger, to stay in my guest room for 3 days at $300 a night. I spent the week before the surgery meal prepping, filling my freezer with single-serving containers of soup and pasta because I knew I wouldn't be able to stand at the stove. I moved my mattress into the living room because the bedroom was upstairs, and I wouldn't be able to climb the steps. I set up a station on the coffee table, water bottles, pill organizers, wet wipes, a long grabbing tool to pick things up off the floor. I did it all alone, the night before the surgery. I sat in the middle of my living room, looking at the fortress I had built for myself. The condo was silent. The only sound was the hum of the refrigerator. I looked at the walls I had painted a soft gray. I looked at the bookshelf I had assembled myself. I looked at the terrifyingly empty space where a family should have been. I realized then that this condo was not just an asset, it was a cocoon. It was the physical manifestation of my survival. I had bought it to prove that I didn't need them. I had maintained it to prove I was capable. I had filled it with things I paid for so that no one could ever say I owed them anything. I went to sleep that night terrified of the anesthesia, terrified of the pain, but comforted by one single fact. I was safe in my own house. I would wake up, I would hurt, but I would come back here, to my place. I did not know then that while I was meticulously arranging my water bottles and folding my clean sheets, my father was already drafting emails to a real estate agent. I did not know that while I was interviewing nurse aides, my mother was looking up the current market value of my zip code. I did not know that while I was lying in the pre-op holding area, shivering in a thin gown, staring at the fluorescent lights and praying I would wake up. They were sitting in a notary's office, laughing about how much the cash infusion would help with the catering bill. They call me selfish. They say I don't care about the family, but as I lay in that hospital bed, staring at the phone that told me my home was gone, I realized the bitterest truth of all. My discipline, my frugality, my desperate need to be independent, it hadn't protected me. It had just fattened the pig for slaughter. I had spent my whole life building a fortress to keep them out, and I had forgotten that they had the same last name as me. I assumed that because I had earned it. It was mine. I assumed that hard work commanded respect. I was wrong. To them, my hard work was just a savings account they hadn't tapped into yet. They didn't sell a house. They sold the hours I worked while my back screamed in pain. They sold the vacations I didn't take. They sold the pride I felt when I signed that first mortgage check. They sold the only place on earth where I felt safe. And they did it for a party. The pain in my back flared again, hot and blinding, pulling me out of the memory. I gripped the sheets. The sadness that had been threatening to drown me began to recede, replaced by something colder, something harder. It was the same coldness I felt when I signed the papers for the other house. The one in Georgia they didn't know about. The one I had bought to save them when they were drowning. The one I held the keys to. They thought they had taken my home. They thought they had left me homeless and broken, but they forgot one thing. I am a product manager. My entire career is built on managing risk, anticipating failure points, and having a backup plan. I closed my eyes and let the image of the condo go. It was gone. I accepted that. But as I exhaled, I visualized the file on my laptop, the one encrypted with a password only I knew. They wanted a show? Fine. I would give them the performance of a lifetime. But first, I had to heal. I had to stand up. And then, I had to make sure that when the curtain fell on their little gala, it fell on their necks. Let's talk about the emergency my father mentioned in that voicemail. When most people hear the words family emergency and need liquidity urgently, their minds go to tragic, unavoidable scenarios. They think of a sudden cancer diagnosis that insurance won't cover. They think of a lawsuit that threatens to bankrupt the household. They think of a natural disaster that has wiped out a roof or a foundation. But I am a Jenkins, and in the Jenkins household, an emergency is defined very differently. An emergency is not a matter of life or death. It is a matter of optics. The crisis that required the liquidation of the only asset I owned was not a medical bill. It was a party. Specifically, it was the Coastal Heritage Foundation Gala, which was scheduled to take place exactly 6 days after my surgery. To the uninitiated, this might just sound like a fancy dinner where rich people eat rubbery chicken and bid on silent auction baskets. But for my mother, Marlene, and my sister, Sienna, this year's gala was the Super Bowl, the Oscars, and a royal coronation rolled into one. This was the night Sienna was officially going to become off the market. The plan, as it had been drilled into my head for months, was a hybrid event. It was a fundraiser, yes, but it was also going to serve as the public unveiling of Sienna's engagement to Miles Crowley. Miles Crowley. Even thinking his name makes my teeth ache. He is the 30-year-old son of a regional banking dynasty, a man who wears boat shoes to indoor events and speaks exclusively in investment metaphors. He is not a bad person, necessarily, but he is hollow. He is a collection of expensive habits looking for a trophy wife to stand next to him in campaign photos when he inevitably runs for city council. Sienna had been hunting him for 2 years. She had morphed herself into exactly what he wanted, a girl who looked good on a sailboat, laughed at his dry jokes, and didn't ask questions about his family's questionable lending practices. But there was a catch. The Crowleys are old money, or at least, they pretend to be. They care about lineage. They care about peers. They do not want their son marrying a girl from a family that is struggling to pay off a second mortgage on a house in a mid-tier subdivision. They want a merger, not a charity case. My parents knew this. They knew that to seal the deal with Miles, they had to look like they belonged at the table. Not just sitting at the table, but buying the table. 2 weeks before my surgery, the pressure began. I was sitting in my kitchen, trying to organize my pre-op paperwork. When my mother called, she didn't ask about the neurosurgeon's credentials. She didn't ask about the recovery time. "We have a problem with the sponsorship tiers," she said, her voice tight with that specific brand of panic she gets when she thinks someone might look down on her. "The Crowleys just bought a platinum table, 10 seats, front and center. Miles's mother made a comment today at brunch. She said, 'It will be so nice to see who steps up to support the community this year.' She was looking right at me. Riley." "Okay," I said, rubbing my temple. "So buy a ticket. Mom, go and have fun." "A ticket?" She let out a sharp, derisive laugh. "You don't just buy a ticket to your daughter's engagement night. Riley, if we just buy tickets, we are spectators. We need to be sponsors. We need our name on the gold donor wall in the lobby. We need to show them that Sienna comes from substance." "How much is a gold sponsorship?" I asked, though I already knew the answer would be obscene. "It is $50,000, she said. "Plus, we promised to cover the open bar for the VIP hour. That is another $15,000. And then there is the matter of the setup gift for Sienna and Miles. We can't let him propose without offering a substantial contribution to their starter home. The Crowleys are putting down $200,000. We need to match it, or at least come close. We can't look like we are selling her off. Riley, we have to look like we are investing in a partnership." I did the math in my head. They were talking about nearly $300,000, money they absolutely did not have. My father had retired early, and his pension was modest. My mother had never worked. They lived on credit and the illusion of wealth. shuffling debt from one card to another like a shell game. "Mom," I said, keeping my voice steady, "I don't have $300,000. "You have equity," she said. The shift in her tone was instant. It went from frantic to calculating. "That condo of yours, the market in Clearwater is exploding right now. Zillow says it is worth over $400,000. I stopped breathing for a second. "I live there. Mom, it is my home." "It is an apartment," she corrected me. "It is a box, and you are single. You don't need all that equity tied up in drywall when your sister has a chance to secure her entire future. Think about the ROI. Riley, if she marries Miles, she is set for life. We are all set. You are just being short-sighted." "I am having spinal fusion surgery in 14 days, I said, my voice rising. "I am going to be out of work for 6 weeks. I need my home. I need my stability. I am not selling my roof so Sienna can have an open bar." "You are so dramatic," she snapped. "We aren't saying you have to be homeless. You can move back in with us for a while. It would be better for your recovery anyway. We could take care of you." The lie was so thick I could almost taste it. They wouldn't take care of me. They would put me in the guest room and then ask me to answer the door when the caterers arrived. "No," I said firmly. "The answer is no. Do not ask me again." "You always do this," she said, her voice turning cold and venomous. "You always find a way to ruin the atmosphere. You are jealous of her. You have always been jealous because things come easily to her and you have to struggle. Well, guess what, Riley? Things come easily to her because she knows how to play the game. You are just bitter." She hung up on me. I thought that was the end of it. I thought I had set a boundary. I was naive. 2 days later, Sienna called. She didn't scream. She didn't yell. That is not Sienna's style. She operates with a sweet, toxic logic that makes you feel crazy for disagreeing with her. "Hey, Riles," she chirped, as if she hadn't just heard our mother scream at me. "I heard you guys had a little fight. I just wanted to check in." "I am not selling my condo. Sienna," I said, cutting straight to the chase. I know, she soothed. "I told Mom to back off. It is your place. You worked hard for it." She paused, letting the silence stretch just long enough to make me feel guilty for being defensive. This is it for me. Riley, Miles is the one. If this night goes perfectly, I never have to worry about anything again. And Mom and Dad, they are so stressed. Dad is talking about taking out a predatory loan just to pay for the sponsorship. I just worry about his heart, They don't have to buy a sponsorship, I said, gritting my teeth. They can just be parents. Ideally, yes, Sienna sighed. But that is not the world we live in. Miles's family, they judge. If we look poor, they will treat me like I am poor. I just thought, since you are going to be laid up in bed anyway, and you are always talking about how you want to move to a bigger place eventually, maybe this was a sign. You could cash out, help the family get over this hump, and then when the wedding is over, Miles and I would help you buy a townhouse or something. We would owe you. Sienna, I said, I am going into surgery. I am scared. I can't deal with this right now. Right, she said, her voice cooling instantly. Your surgery, of course, that is the priority. It is always about your pain, isn't it? Well, good luck. Riley, I hope it is worth it. I didn't realize until later, until I was lying in that recovery room with 87 missed calls, that they weren't asking me for permission. They were testing my defenses. They were gauging how distracted I was. And then I remembered the moment that should have tipped me off. It was 3 weeks ago. My father had come over to help me move a bookshelf, which mostly involved him standing around drinking my iced tea while I pushed the furniture. He had said casually, wiping a ring of condensation off the table. With you going into the hospital, we should probably make sure your important papers are secure. You never know. Fires, burglaries. If something happened while you were under, and we needed to access your insurance or your will, where do you keep that stuff? I hadn't thought twice about it. I was tired. I was in pain. I trusted him because he was my father. "It is in the fireproof box in the closet," I had said, pointing down the hall. "Top shelf. The key is in the fake plant by the door." He had nodded, looking at the hallway with a thoughtful expression. "Smart," he said. "Good to be prepared." I thought he was talking about emergency preparedness. I thought he was being a responsible parent. I was wrong. He wasn't checking for safety. He was scouting the location of the deed. He was making sure that when the time came, when I was unconscious and vulnerable, he wouldn't have to waste time ransacking the place. He could walk in, take the title to my home, and walk out before the anesthesia had even fully taken hold. They didn't sell my home because they were desperate for food. They didn't sell it to pay for a life-saving operation. They sold it because they needed to stand in a hotel ballroom, holding flutes of champagne, and pretend they were better than they were. They traded my sanctuary for a gold plaque on a piece of foam core that would be thrown in the trash the next morning. The nurse came back into the room, checking my IV bag. "Ms. Jenkins, your blood pressure is rising," she warned gently. "You need to try to calm down." I looked at her, and for the first time since I woke up, I smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. It didn't reach my eyes. "I am calm," I lied. My parents and my sister thought they had pulled off the perfect heist. They thought the timing was genius. Wait until she is cut open. Wait until she is drugged. Wait until she physically cannot stop us. They thought that by the time I was well enough to fight, the money would be spent, the wedding would be booked, and I would be forced to accept it because family is family, but they made a miscalculation, a massive one. They were so focused on the condo, so focused on the visible asset, that they forgot to ask what else I had been doing with my money for the last 5 years. They forgot that I am the one who fixes their messes. They forgot that when they were drowning in debt 3 years ago, someone had thrown them a lifeline. They thought they were the kings and queens of the castle. They didn't know they were standing on my land. The phone felt like a brick in my hand. My fingers were still numb at the tips, a lingering souvenir from the anesthesia. But I forced them to work. I hit the redial button. I needed to hear his voice again. I needed to hear him explain the unexplainable, without the safety net of a voicemail recording. He picked up on the second ring. "I assumed you would call back," my father said. His voice was devoid of guilt. It was the tone of a project manager addressing a subordinate who had missed a deadline, not a father who had just liquidated his daughter's life savings. "Are you lucid enough to have a rational conversation now? Or are you still emotional?" "Emotional?" I repeated. The words scraped against my dry throat. "You sold my home, Dad. You sold the place where I sleep. You sold the place where I keep my birth certificate and my grandfather's watch. You don't get to ask me if I am emotional." "See, this is exactly what I was hoping to avoid." He sighed, the sound of air hissing through his teeth loud in my ear. "You are using inflammatory language. Riley, we did not sell your home in the traditional sense. We simply reallocated a dormant asset. That condo was sitting there, tying up equity that the family desperately needed to access. It was a strategic move, a reallocation." "Reallocation," I said, tasting the bile that rose in my throat. "Is that what you told the title company? Is that what you told the buyer? That you were reallocating a property that does not belong to you?" "We are a family unit," he said, his voice hardening. "What belongs to one of us is a resource for all of us. You have been sitting on that equity for years while your sister struggled to get her brand off the ground. It was selfish. Riley, we just corrected the imbalance." I closed my eyes. The pain in my back was a rhythmic thumping, a drumbeat of agony that synchronized with my pulse. I tried to focus on the ceiling tiles, counting the little perforations to keep myself from screaming. "Dad," I said, dropping my voice to a dangerous whisper, "I want you to tell me exactly how you signed the papers. I know real estate law. I know the process. You need a notary. You need a witness. You need the seller present. I was unconscious in a sterile room 5 miles away. So tell me, how did you do it?" There was a silence on the other end of the line. It wasn't the silence of shame, it was the silence of calculation. He was trying to decide how much truth I could handle, or perhaps how much of a lie he could get away with. "We have our ways," he said finally, his tone dismissive. "We have friends in the industry who understand that family situations sometimes require flexibility. Don't worry your head about the administrative details. The point is, the paperwork is filed, the deed is transferred, it is a done deal." "Flexibility?" I echoed. "You mean fraud? You mean forgery?" "Watch your mouth," he snapped. "You are talking to your father." "I am talking to a thief," I said. Before he could respond, there was a shuffling sound on the line, the friction of a phone being passed from one hand to another. Then, my mother's voice filled my ear. "Riley," she said. She sounded exhausted, as if she were the one who had just undergone a 9-hour spinal fusion. "Please, stop this. You are awake. You are alive. That is what matters. Why do you have to immediately start picking fights? This is Sienna's week. Do you have any idea how much pressure she is under? The gala is in 6 days. She is trying to coordinate the florists, the lighting designers, the press. She does not need you causing a scene because of some apartment." "Some apartment," I said, my voice trembling. "Mom, that apartment is the only thing I own. It is my safety net. You took it. We borrowed it," she cried out, her voice pitching up into that shrill register she used whenever she wanted to play the victim. "My God, Riley, you act like we left you on the street. You can come stay at the house in Georgia. We have the guest room. We are doing this for the family. Why can't you ever see the big picture? It is always about you, your job, your back, your condo." "It is my name on the deed," I said, emphasizing every word. "My name, not yours, not Dad's, not Sienna's. You had no right." "We have every right," my father's voice roared from the background, distant but furious. "We raised you. We put clothes on your back. We paid for your braces. We fed you for 18 years. You think you just sprang out of the earth fully formed? Everything you are, everything you have achieved, is because of the foundation we built for you. And now, when we need a return on that investment, you want to hoard it? You ungrateful little—" "I have supported myself since the day I turned 18. I cut in, my voice icy. "I paid for my own college. I paid for my own car. I paid for this surgery because I knew you wouldn't help. I don't owe you a return on investment. Dad, I am your daughter, not a stock option." "Oh, stop it. Just stop it." My mother was crying now. I could hear the wet, ragged gasps for air. "You are killing him. Riley, look at him. His face is red. You know he has high blood pressure. You are going to give him a stroke right here in the living room. Is that what you want? You want to kill your father over money?" It was a classic maneuver. The pivot. When logic fails, use guilt. When guilt fails, use a medical emergency. They were gaslighting me so hard the air in my hospital room felt flammable. They were trying to make me feel like the aggressor for asking why they had stolen $500,000 from me. I realized then that there was no point in arguing. There was no point in trying to explain the concept of personal property or boundaries or love. They didn't speak that language, to them. I was an appliance that had malfunctioned. I was a vending machine that had refused to dispense the product after they kicked it. I took a deep breath. I needed one piece of information. Just one. "Fine," I said. "I don't want Dad to have a stroke." "Good," my mother sniffled. "Good. I knew you would be reasonable." "I just have one question," I said, keeping my voice perfectly flat. "The money, the $425,000, it takes time for a wire transfer to clear into a personal account. Where is it right now?" "It is handled," she said quickly. Too quickly. "Is it in your joint account?" I asked. "Because if it is, the bank might flag a deposit that large. I just want to make sure you don't get in trouble with the IRS." "It is not in our account," she said, her guard dropping slightly as she latched onto the idea of me helping them avoid trouble. We had the buyer send it directly to the vendor to expedite things. The deposits had to be made today. Riley, that is why we couldn't wait. Which vendor? I asked. The caterer? No, the event management firm, she said. They are handling all the disbursements for the gala. Prestige Coastal Events. They are holding the funds in escrow to pay the venue and the decorators. It is all very professional. Prestige Coastal Events. I memorized the name instantly. I locked it into my brain alongside the memory of the pain in my spine. Okay, I said. Okay, Mom, I understand. I am glad, she said, letting out a long, shaky breath. We will come visit you in a day or two. Once the dust settles, just rest, and don't post anything on social media. We don't want people getting the wrong idea. I won't post anything, I promised. Good girl, she said. We love you. Riley. The line went dead. I lowered the phone. My hand was shaking so hard the device rattled against the plastic rail of the hospital bed. We love you. They loved me when I was silent. They loved me when I was compliant. They loved me when I was letting them cannibalize my life to feed their delusions of grandeur. I stared at the black screen of my phone. I felt a tear slide down my cheek, hot and stinging. It was the only one I would allow. I wiped it away with the back of my hand, wincing as the movement pulled at the incision in my back. I took a sip of the lukewarm water from the cup on the bedside table. Then, I opened my contacts list. I didn't scroll. I typed in the name. Grant Holloway. He was not a family friend. He was not a gentle advisor. He was a real estate shark I had met at a tech mixer 2 years ago. We had bonded over a conversation about contract loopholes. He was expensive, he was aggressive, and he had told me once, half joking, if you ever have a problem that requires a sledgehammer instead of a scalpel, call me. My parents had used a scalpel to cut me out of my own life while I was sleeping. It was time for the sledgehammer. I pressed the call button. It rang once, twice. Grant Holloway, a deep, gravelly voice answered. Background noise suggested he was in a restaurant or a busy office. Make it quick. Grant, I said, my voice raspy but clear. It is Riley Jenkins, Marrow Peak Solutions. Riley. His tone shifted, becoming warmer but still sharp. I haven't heard from you in a while. I thought you were going in for back surgery. I did, I said. I am in the recovery room right now. And you are calling me? He chuckled dryly. That is either extreme dedication to networking or a very bad sign. My parents sold my house while I was under anesthesia, I said. The silence on the other end was absolute. The background noise seemed to fade away. Say that again, Grant said. My parents sold my condo in Clearwater, I repeated. They forged my signature on a power of attorney. They closed the deal this morning. The money, $425,000, has been wired to a third-party vendor called Prestige Coastal Events. Are you sedated? Grant asked. I need to know if I am talking to the drugs or the client. I am lucid, I said. I am angry. And I want to know if I can stop that money before they spend it. Riley, Grant said, and I could hear the sound of a chair scraping back, as if he was standing up. If they forged your signature on a deed transfer, that is not just a civil dispute. That is a felony. That is grand larceny, forgery, and wire fraud. You are talking about sending your parents to prison. I looked up at the ceiling. I thought about the reallocation. I thought about, don't ruin Sienna's week. I thought about the way my father had said we raised you as if I were a bill they had finally decided to collect. I am not talking about prison yet, I said. I am talking about leverage. Can you freeze the funds? If the money is with a vendor and not in a personal account, and if we can prove the originating transaction was fraudulent, yes, Grant said. I can file an emergency injunction. I can have a sheriff at that event company's door within 2 hours, but you have to give me the go-ahead. Once I pull this trigger, Riley, there is no unpulling it. This is nuclear. I closed my eyes. I pictured my condo. I pictured the empty space where my life used to be. And then, I pictured the other house, the secret house in Georgia, the ace up my sleeve that they didn't know existed. "Grant," I said, "do not just freeze the money. I want you to open a full investigation. I want every text message, every email, every document they used to sell my home. I want it all." "Consider it done," Grant said. "I will need you to sign a retainer. Can you use your phone?" "Yes," I said. "One more thing," Grant said, his voice dropping. "Usually, when family steals from family, it is because they are desperate, but this sounds organized. Are you sure you are ready for what we might find?" "They think I am helpless," I said. "They think I am lying here broken. They have no idea what I am capable of." "Okay," Grant said. "I am opening the file now. What is your goal here, Riley? Do you want the house back? Or do you want the money?" "I want the truth," I said. "And after that, I want them to hurt." "Understood," Grant said. "Check your email in 30 seconds. I hung up the phone. The screen was warm against my cheek. My back was screaming. My head was pounding, and my heart felt like a stone in my chest. But for the first time since I woke up, I didn't feel like a victim. I felt like the CEO of my own revenge. I waited for the email notification. When it dinged, I opened the document. I didn't read the fine print. I scrolled to the bottom, and with a finger that was finally steady, I signed my name, my real name, Riley Jenkins. The war had begun. Grant Holloway did not come to the hospital. He was a man who understood that in the digital age, physical presence was often less effective than immediate digital intervention. 3 hours after our initial phone call, his face appeared on the screen of my iPad, framed by the expensive mahogany bookshelves of his office in downtown Tampa. I had propped the tablet up on my meal tray. My back was a throbbing landscape of misery, managed only by the morphine drip and the cold fury that had settled in my marrow. "I have the documents," Grant said without preamble. He didn't ask how I was feeling. He knew that right now. I wasn't a patient. I was a plaintiff. I pulled the filing from the county clerk's digital registry. It was recorded at 9:30 this morning. They didn't waste a single second. He shared his screen. A PDF document filled the frame. "This," Grant said, his cursor circling a block of text, "is the durable power of attorney they use to bypass your consent. And Riley, it is terrifying, not because it is sophisticated, but because it is so incredibly lazy." I squinted at the screen. There, at the bottom of the page, was my name. Riley Jenkins, and next to it, a signature. It looked like my signature. It had the same general slant, the same loop on the R. To a bank teller or a distracted title clerk, it would pass. But to me, looking at it with the intimate knowledge of my own hand, it was wrong. The Y at the end didn't tail off correctly. It was too sharp. It was a hesitation mark. "That is not my signature," I said, my voice flat. "I know it isn't," Grant said. "I had my forensic handwriting analyst look at it 10 minutes ago. He pointed out 3 points of divergence immediately. But here's the kicker. Look at the notary stamp." He zoomed in. The stamp was blurry, the ink slightly smeared. State of Alabama, Limestone County. "Alabama?" I frowned. "My parents are in Florida. I am in Florida. The condo is in Florida." "Exactly," Grant said, leaning back in his chair. "This is what we call a remote online notarization, or RON. It is legal in many states, but it requires a video session where the signer, you, holds up ID and answers security questions. Since you were under anesthesia, you obviously didn't do that, which means they either found a dirty notary who was willing to break the law for a few $100, or they hired someone to impersonate you on camera." I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the hospital air conditioning. "They hired someone to be me?" "It is possible," Grant said. "Or, more likely, they used a slide-through service. There are shady online platforms that process these things in bulk without checking the video logs. We are going to subpoena the video record of the notary session, if they can't produce it, or if it shows your sister wearing a wig, This document is void ab initio, dead on arrival. So the sale is void? I asked, a flicker of hope igniting in my chest. I get the condo back? Grant's expression tightened. This was the part where the lawyer stopped being a cheerleader and started being a realist. It is not that simple, he said. The sale happened. The deed has been recorded. The buyer, an entity called Sunshine Liquidity Partners, LLC, paid cash, in the eyes of the law, unless we can prove they knew about the fraud. They might claim status as a bona fide purchaser. That means they bought the property in good faith, believing the paperwork was valid. Unwinding a sale from a bona fide purchaser can take years. Riley, we would have to sue for title, go to trial, and prove you were incapacitated. Years, I whispered. So my home is gone. For now. The physical possession is compromised, Grant admitted. But the criminal case, that is a sledgehammer. Forging a signature on a deed is a second-degree felony. Using it to obtain $425,000 takes it up to first-degree grand larceny. We are talking about 15 years in prison, minimum. And that is just for the state charges. If they use the internet to facilitate this, which they did with the remote notary, it becomes wire fraud. That is federal. He paused, letting the weight of that sink in. Your parents didn't just bend the rules. Riley, they walked into a bank robbery without a mask. I don't care about the prison time right now, I said, though a dark part of me found the idea strangely comforting. I care about the money. They sent it to the event planner. Prestige Coastal Events. Right, Grant said. He typed something on his keyboard. I have already drafted a temporary restraining order. We are going to file it ex parte, which means we don't have to tell your parents we are doing it. We serve it directly to Prestige Coastal Events and the bank holding their escrow account. It essentially freezes that $425,000 in place. If the event planner spends a dime of it after being served, they become an accessory to the theft. Sienna's gala, I said softly. If the money is frozen, then the checks bounce, Grant finished. The caterer doesn't show up. The venue locks the doors. The flowers don't get delivered. The setup gift for Miles Crowley vanishes. He looked at me, his eyes searching my face on the screen. This is the decision point, Riley. If I file this, I am nuking their event. I am embarrassing them in front of the entire social circle they are trying to impress. There is no coming back from this. Are you sure you want to pull the trigger? I thought about the voicemail. We reallocated an asset. I thought about my mother saying, "Don't be selfish." I thought about Sienna saying, "You have a house. What's a little sacrifice?" They didn't hesitate to cut me open, I said. Why should I hesitate to cut off their credit? Understood, Grant said. But here's the strategy. We don't tell them yet. We don't let them know we have a lawyer. We don't let them know we know about the fake notary. Why? Because right now, they are arrogant, Grant explained. They think they got away with it. They think you are just a whiny daughter who will eventually get over it. If they know you have legal counsel, they will circle the wagons. They might hide any remaining cash. They might destroy text messages. They might claim you gave verbal permission and they just expedited the paperwork. I want them to feel safe. I want them to keep talking to you. You want me to let them gaslight me, I realized. I want you to record them gaslighting you, Grant corrected. Florida is a two-party consent state for recording, which means you usually need permission. However, there is a massive exception for communications that are not private, like threats or admissions of a crime. But to be safe, do not record voice calls unless you tell them. Instead, stick to text, stick to email. Get them to write it down. Make them explain why they did it. Every time they type, "We did it for the family," or "We signed for you," they are confessing to a felony. I nodded slowly. The pain in my back was still there, but it felt distant now, pushed aside by the cold clarity of the mission. I can do that, I said. I have already screenshotted the texts from this morning. Good, Grant said. Upload them to the secure portal I sent you. And Riley? Don't block them. Let the abuse come. Every nasty text they send about you being selfish helps us prove that you were under duress and that this was a hostile action, not a family agreement." He looked down at his notes, then back up at me. His expression shifted. He looked less like a lawyer and more like a detective who had just found a smoking gun in a different room. "There is one more thing," he said. "The buyer, Sunshine Liquidity Partners, LLC. What about them?" "I ran a quick check on their formation documents," Grant said. "They were incorporated 3 days ago, in Delaware. That is standard for shell companies. But the registered agent? It is a law firm here in town. A small one, the kind that handles traffic tickets and specific private client services." So, Grant leaned in closer to the camera. "This deal closed in 24 hours. Cash, no inspection, no walkthrough. Riley, nobody buys a $400,000 condo site unseen in 24 hours unless they have seen it before, or unless they were tipped off that it was coming on the market at a fire sale price." "You think they had a buyer lined up before I even went into surgery?" I said. "I think your parents didn't just decide this yesterday," Grant said. "I think they have been shopping your home around for weeks. This was premeditated. And whoever bought it, they are connected to someone your family knows. This wasn't a market transaction. This was a handover." I felt sick. "Can we find out who owns the LLC?" "Eventually," Grant said. "We will peel that onion layer by layer. But for now, the priority is the money. I am filing the injunction. By tomorrow morning, that cash will be frozen. But I need to ask you something personal." "Go ahead." "This is going to get ugly," Grant said. "When we freeze that money, your parents are going to lose their minds. They are going to come at you with everything they have. They will threaten you. They will try to get to your assets. They will try to claim you are mentally unstable. They will try to find anything they can to leverage against you." He paused, his eyes locking onto mine through the screen. "So I need to know, is there anything else? Is there any other property? Any other account? Any other vulnerability that they know about? Or is there anything they don't know about?" The room went silent. The heart monitor beeped its steady, indifferent rhythm. I looked at the lawyer. I thought about the secret I had kept for 4 years, the secret that was currently housing my parents in Lakemont, Georgia, the secret that gave me more power over them than they could possibly imagine. They thought they had taken my only home. They thought I was destitute. They didn't know that for the last 48 months, I had been the invisible hand keeping a roof over their heads. "They don't know everything," I said quietly. "Good," Grant said. "What don't they know?" I took a deep breath. "You asked if I had any other assets." "Yes." "I do," I said. "I own another house." Grant's eyebrows shot up. "An investment property?" "Technically," I said. "But my tenants are complicated." "Who are the tenants?" Grant asked. I smiled. It was the first genuine smile I had felt in 24 hours. It was cold, sharp, and dangerous. "My parents," I said, to understand the sheer, poetic irony of the situation. "You have to go back 4 years. You have to understand that before I was the villain in their narrative, before I was the selfish daughter who ruined Sienna's week, I was their savior. I just never told them." It was a Tuesday night in November, almost 4 years ago exactly. I was asleep in my old apartment, a cramped one-bedroom I was renting while saving up for the condo in Clearwater. My phone rang at 2 a.m. When you get a call at that hour, your brain immediately cycles through the worst-case scenarios. Car accident, heart attack, fire. I picked up, my heart hammering against my ribs. "Hello?" "Riley," my mother sobbed. "They are going to take it. They are going to take the house." I sat up, switching on the lamp. "Who is taking what? Slow down." It took 20 minutes to get the full story out of her. My parents had stopped paying the mortgage on their house in Lakemont, Georgia, 6 months prior. They had stopped paying because they had redirected the funds to help Sienna launch a jewelry line that consisted of reselling cheap imports from overseas at a 400% markup. The business had failed. Obviously, The money was gone, and the bank had finally lost patience. The foreclosure notice was taped to their front door. They had 30 days to vacate. "We have nowhere to go," my father had said, taking the phone from my mother. His voice was trembling, stripped of its usual bravado. "We will be on the street. Riley, your mother can't handle that. It will kill her." They begged me for money. They asked for $40,000 to catch up on the arrears. I had the money. I had been saving aggressively for years, but I knew something they didn't want to admit. If I gave them the cash, they would burn through it in 6 months, and we would be back in this exact same conversation. You cannot fix a leaking bucket by pouring more water into it. You have to fix the bucket. I told them I couldn't give them the cash directly. They screamed. They called me heartless. They hung up. But I didn't go back to sleep. Instead, I stayed up all night, looking at their financials, which I had access to because I had set up their online banking years ago. The situation was hopeless. The house was underwater. The only way out was a short sale or a foreclosure auction. So, I formulated a plan. It was a plan born out of love, but also out of a desperate need for control. I wanted to save them, but I didn't want them to know I was the one doing it. If they knew I owned the house, they would never pay rent. They would guilt me. They would treat me like a live-in servant. I wanted them to have a roof over their heads, but I needed a barrier between their chaos and my sanity. I created a company, Harbor Lint Holdings, LLC. It sounds boring. It sounds like a faceless conglomerate that manages diversified assets. I paid an attorney $500 to file the paperwork in Delaware. Then, I approached their bank. I didn't go as Riley Jenkins. I went as the representative of Harbor Lint Holdings. I offered to buy the distressed property in a cash deal, sight unseen, allowing the current occupants to stay on as tenants under a leaseback agreement. The bank was thrilled to get the toxic asset off their books. My parents were ecstatic. They thought it was a miracle. They thought some benevolent investment firm had swooped in to save them because the real estate market was shifting. I remember the call my father made to me after they signed the papers. "You see, Riley," he had gloated, "you were so worried, but things always work out for good people. We found an investor, we are restructuring, we get to keep the house, and we just pay a monthly lease fee. It is brilliant business." "That is great, Dad," I had said, biting my tongue so hard I tasted copper. "Harbor Lint Holdings," he said, rolling the name around like a fine wine. "They see the potential in the property, unlike some people who don't believe in this family. For 4 years, they have lived in that house in Lakemont. It is a nice house, 4 bedrooms, a sprawling porch, a manicured lawn, and for 4 years, on the 1st of every month, they have written a check for $1,800 to Harbor Lint Holdings, LLC. They send the check to a P.O. box in Atlanta. A forwarding service scans it and deposits it into a business account that I control. They have never missed a payment. That is the thing that stings the most. They pay the corporation with respect. They fear the corporation. They write polite little notes in the memo line like, "Thank you" or "November rent." They would never treat me with that kind of professional courtesy. To them, I am Riley, the ATM they can kick when it malfunctions. To them, Harbor Lint Holdings is an authority figure. I use that rent money to pay the property taxes and the insurance on the house. I didn't make a profit. I wasn't doing it to get rich. I was doing it so my parents wouldn't be homeless. I was doing it because, despite everything, I loved them. I lay back against the hospital pillows. The memory washing over me. It felt different now. Yesterday, that secret felt like a burden. Today, it felt like ammunition. "Riley?" Grant's voice pulled me back to the present. He was still on the screen, looking at a document I had just uploaded to the portal. "I am looking at the deed for the Lakemont property. This is airtight." "I know," I said. "I hired a very expensive lawyer to set it up." "You own the house," Grant said, shaking his head in disbelief. "You literally own the floor they are standing on. Does Sienna know?" "No one knows," I said. "Just me and the IRS?" Grant began to scroll through the lease agreement. His eyes were darting back and forth, scanning the clauses. Suddenly, he stopped. A slow, predatory grin spread across his face. "Riley," he said, "do you know when this current lease term expires?" I frowned. "I think it is a standard 12-month renewal. It usually renews in the spring." "Look at the date," Grant said. "The lease term ends on February 5th. That is 5 days from now." I did the mental math. Today was the 30th. The gala was on the 4th. The lease expired the day after the gala. "It expires next Monday," I said. "And look at Clause 14B. Grant directed me. "The automatic renewal clause. It states that unless the landlord provides notice of non-renewal at least 30 days prior, the lease converts to a month-to-month arrangement. However, it also states that the landlord reserves the right to terminate the lease with immediate effect if the tenant is found to have engaged in criminal activity that compromises the financial standing of the landlord or its affiliates." I stared at the screen. I had forgotten about that clause. It was standard boilerplate language that the lawyer had inserted to protect the LLC from liability. "Affiliates," I whispered. "I am the sole member of the LLC. If they steal from me—" "They are stealing from the landlord," Grant finished. "Technically, by forging your signature and stealing your liquid assets. They have violated the terms of their lease agreement with Harbor Lint Holdings. You don't have to wait for the lease to expire. You can serve them with a notice to quit immediately, or you can simply choose not to renew the lease on the 5th. Either way, you have the power to evict them." The realization hit me with the force of a physical blow. They had sold my home because they wanted to play dress-up at a gala. They had thrown me to the wolves to secure their social standing, and all the while, they were sleeping in a bed that belonged to me. They were eating dinner at a table that stood on my floorboards. "They think they are homeowners," I said softly. "They walk around that town acting like landed gentry. If people knew they were renters, worse, if people knew they were being evicted, it would destroy the image," Grant said. "And for people like your parents, the image is more important than the reality." He leaned forward. "So, here is the question. Riley, we have the injunction ready for the money. That stops the party. But this, the house, this is the kill shot. This is the thing that leaves them with nothing. When do you want to tell them?" I thought about it. I could tell them now. I could call my father and say, "Guess who owns Harbor Lint Holdings?" I could hear the fear in his voice. I could make them beg. But that wasn't enough. If I told them now, in private, they would spin it. They would tell people I was a vindictive monster who tricked them. They would play the victim card. They would say, "Look at our ungrateful daughter, kicking her elderly parents out on the street just because of a misunderstanding about a condo." No, I needed witnesses. I needed a situation where they couldn't lie. I needed a moment where the truth would be so public, so undeniable, that no amount of gaslighting could cover it up. "The gala," I said. Grant nodded slowly. "The gala is on the 4th. The lease expires on the 5th. They want to impress the Crowleys," I said. "They want to stand on that stage and be celebrated as the generous, wealthy Jenkins family. They want to announce Sienna's engagement and pretend they are bringing a fortune to the marriage. And you want to be the one to correct the record," Grant said. "I don't want to make a scene," I said, my voice cold. "I just want to deliver a message. I want them to receive the notice of non-renewal when they are at their highest point. I want them to read it while they are wearing their tuxedos and gowns." "We can do that," Grant said. "I can have a process server deliver the documents to the venue. It is public property. We can serve them right at the table." "No," I said. "Not a process server. That looks like a lawsuit. They might just shove it in a purse and ignore it until the morning." I looked at the hospital ceiling, formulating the final pieces of the puzzle. "I will deliver it," I said. "You?" Grant looked skeptical. "You just had spinal surgery. You can't walk." "I have 6 days," I said. "I will be discharged in 3. I can walk with a cane. I can sit in a wheelchair if I have to. But I need to be there. Grant, I need to look them in the eye when they realize that the daughter they sacrificed is the only reason they have a roof over their heads. It is risky, Grant warned. Ideally, you should stay away from the stress. The stress is what is keeping me alive right now, I said. Draft the papers. Prepare the notice from Harborlint Holdings. Make it official. Make it look like a corporate termination letter. And Grant? Yes? Make sure you include a copy of the Articles of Incorporation, I said. The page that lists the owner's name, I want them to see it in black and white. Grant typed a few notes, the clicking of his keyboard sounding like gunshots in the quiet room. You are a scary woman, Riley Jenkins, he said, and this time, there was genuine respect in his voice. I am almost sorry for them. Don't be, I said. They had a choice. They could have asked me. They could have treated me like a human being. Instead, they treated me like a resource. So now, I am going to act like one. I am going to act like a landlord. I closed the connection. The screen went black. I lay there in the silence, feeling the weight of the secret I had carried for 4 years. I used to think I was protecting them by hiding the truth. I used to think I was sparing their dignity. I was wrong. I was enabling their delusion. I was feeding the monster that eventually grew big enough to eat me. I had bought that house to save them. It was an act of love. It was the most expensive, most complicated, most burdensome act of love I had ever committed, and in the end, it turned out to be the perfect trap. I closed my eyes and let the morphine pull me down into sleep. For the first time since the surgery, I didn't dream about pain. I dreamed about a ballroom. I dreamed about bright lights. And I dreamed about the look on my father's face when he realized that the ground beneath his feet didn't belong to him. It belonged to me. The modern weapon of choice for a family assassination is not a gun or a knife. It is an Instagram story, filmed in soft lighting with a sad filter. Posted at prime time for maximum engagement. I was lying in my hospital bed, staring at the ceiling, when my phone buzzed. It was a notification from Instagram. Sienna, Jenkins has added to their story. I knew I should not look. I knew it was bait, but I am a data analyst. I need to know the inputs to predict the outputs. I tapped the screen. The video opened. Sienna was sitting in what looked like her bedroom, but I knew it was actually a staged corner of the living room where the lighting was best. She was wearing a beige, oversized sweater, the universal uniform of the I am going through something influencer. Her hair was messy in a way that took 40 minutes to style. Her eyes were rimmed with red, likely enhanced by a little makeup. Hey guys, she whispered, her voice cracking perfectly on the second word. I know I have been quiet today about the gala prep. I am dealing with a really heavy situation. She looked away from the camera, then back, a masterclass in manufactured vulnerability. It is just so hard when you're trying to build a future, and people you love, people who are supposed to support you, just let their jealousy take over. There is someone in my family who is trying to sabotage my engagement week. They are threatening to ruin everything because they can't stand to see me happy. I am trying to stay positive for Miles, but honestly, I am heartbroken. Please send good vibes. We really need them right now. The video ended. She didn't name me. She didn't have to. Within 10 minutes, the flying monkeys arrived. My phone, which had been relatively quiet for an hour, exploded. First, it was Aunt Linda, my mother's sister, a woman who had not sent me a birthday card in 6 years. I saw Sienna's post. I can't believe you. Riley, your sister is under so much pressure, and you are adding to it? You have always been the difficult one. Then came a cousin I barely knew. Wow, sabotaging a wedding? That is a new low. Even for you. Grow up. Then came the friends of my mother, a chorus of middle-aged women who lived for gossip. Your poor mother is beside herself. She told us you are demanding money from them while you are in the hospital. How can you be so selfish? You have a good job. Let your sister have her moment. I read every single message. I did not reply. I did not defend myself. I did not type out a paragraph explaining that they had forged my signature and sold my home. Instead, I opened a new folder on my cloud drive. I named it evidence_social. I took screenshots. I screen recorded Sienna's story before it expired. I captured every nasty text, every timestamp, every accusation. They thought they were shaming me into submission. In reality, they were documenting a harassment campaign that Grant could use to prove malicious intent. If we ever went to civil court, they were handing me the ammunition, and they were too stupid to realize the safety was off. I was in the middle of archiving a particularly vicious text from my uncle when Grant's face appeared on my screen again. He looked different this time. He looked less like a lawyer and more like a hunter who had just found fresh tracks in the mud. "Don't look at social media," he said immediately. "Too late," I said, my voice raspy. "Apparently, I am the villain of the year. Sienna is crying in a beige sweater." "Let her cry," Grant said dismissively. "It is noise. I found something better than noise. I found the signal." He pulled up a spreadsheet. It was a trace of the wire transfer. "Okay, remember how your mother said the money went to Prestige Coastal Events? The event planner?" "Yes." "She wasn't lying, but she wasn't telling the whole truth," Grant said. "The money did not go to Prestige's main operating account. It went to a sub-account labeled Escrow Services. That is normal for big deposits. But here is where it gets interesting. I ran a background check on the entity that bought your condo. Sunshine Liquidity Partners, LLC. "The shell company," I said. "Right. The registered agent is that local law firm I told you about, but I dug deeper. I looked for any other transactions linked to that specific law firm and that specific LLC structure, and I found a pattern." Grant leaned into the camera. "Riley, the person who referred the cash buyer to your parents wasn't a random real estate agent. There is a name attached to the introduction email in the closing packet. Does the name Chloe Vantage mean anything to you?" My blood ran cold. "Chloe," I said. "Chloe is Sienna's brand manager. She is the one who tells Sienna what to wear, who to tag, and how to pose." "Well," Grant said grimly, "Chloe is also a silent partner in a flipper ring. They target distressed properties, buy them fast for cash using funds from wealthy private investors, and then resell them 3 months later for a 40% profit. Chloe didn't just find a buyer for your parents. She is the buyer. Or rather, she is the broker who set it up to strip the equity out of your condo." I stared at the screen, my mind racing. This wasn't just my parents panicking, I realized. This was a setup. "Exactly," Grant said. "Sienna's manager saw an opportunity. She knew your parents were desperate for cash to pay for the gala, a gala she is probably organizing and taking a commission on. So she convinces them to sell your condo to her shell company at a below-market rate. Your parents get the quick cash to pay for the party. Chloe gets a condo worth $450,000 for a steal, and Sienna? She gets her dream wedding. And I get homeless," I said. "They cannibalized you," Grant said. "It is an ecosystem of grift. Your parents are the useful idiots. Chloe is the predator, and Sienna is the beneficiary. Does Sienna know?" I asked. "That is the million-dollar question," Grant said. "But considering she is currently on Instagram playing the victim while her manager is counting the commission from selling your house, I would say her hands aren't clean." My phone buzzed again. I expected another hate text from an aunt, but it wasn't. The name on the screen made me pause. Miles Crowley. I stared at it. Miles never texted me. We had spoken maybe 5 times in 2 years. He was always polite, distant, the kind of guy who treated family gatherings like networking events. I opened the message. "Riley, I hope your surgery went well. I am hearing a lot of conflicting stories today. Sienna is very upset, and your father is saying some intense things about you trying to block the vendor payments. I am a businessman. Riley, I don't like noise. Is there something I should know before I sign the final checks for this weekend?" I looked at the text. It was the crack in the dam. My parents and Sienna were operating on emotion. They were spinning a narrative of jealous sister, but Miles? Miles operated on logic. Miles cared about reputation. And most importantly, Miles understood contracts. If I told him the emotional story, "They stole my house," he might dismiss it as family drama. He might think I was hysterical. So I didn't give him emotion. I gave him data. I typed carefully, my fingers hovering over the glass screen. Miles. The noise is a distraction. If you want to know the truth, don't look at Instagram. Ask my father to show you the power of attorney document they used to sell the condo at 421 Bayview yesterday. Check the date on the signature, then check the hospital records for my surgery time. The math does not work. That is all I will say. I hit send. I didn't threaten. I didn't accuse. I just gave him the coordinates and let him dig his own grave for them. "What did you just do?" Grant asked. Seeing the look on my face, "I just planted a seed in Miles Crowley's head," I said. "He is smart. He won't ignore a due diligence red flag." "Good," Grant said, "because I have the physical ammunition ready." He held up 2 large manila envelopes in front of his camera. "Envelope number 1, he said, tapping the one on the left. "This contains the draft of the criminal complaint, forgery, grand larceny, wire fraud. It also contains the temporary restraining order that I am filing with the court in 1 hour. This freezes the money at Prestige Coastal Events. Once this lands, the party is dead." "And the second one?" I asked. Grant picked up the envelope on the right. It looked thinner, sharper. "Envelope number 2, he said. "This is the notice of non-renewal and termination of lease from Harbor Lint Holdings, LLC. It is addressed to Dale and Marlene Jenkins. It informs them that their lease expires on February 5th and will not be renewed due to a breach of contract, specifically, criminal actions against the landlord's interests." He paused, looking at the envelopes like a general inspecting his troops. "I have arranged for a courier," Grant said. "But you said you wanted to deliver these yourself?" "Not the criminal complaint," I said. "Let the police or the process server handle that part later. I want to deliver the lease termination. I want to hand it to them." "At the gala?" Grant asked. "Yes." "Riley, you can't walk," he reminded me again. "I have 4 days," I said. "I will crawl if I have to. They are going to be standing on that stage, thanking everyone for their support. They are going to be bragging about their family values. I need to be the one to hand them the paper that tells them they are homeless." "It is theatrical," Grant admitted. "But it is legally valid. If you hand it to them before midnight on the 4th, you have met the notice requirement." "It is not theatrical," I said, closing my eyes as a wave of exhaustion hit me. "It is educational. They need to learn that you cannot burn down someone's house to keep yourself warm and expect them not to hand you the bill." "I will have the papers ready," Grant said. "I am filing the injunction on the money now. By this evening, the event planner is going to call your mother and tell her the funds are frozen. That is when the real storm starts." "Let it start," I said. "I am in a hospital. I am safe here. They can scream all they want." "One more thing," Grant said before he signed off. "Miles, if he checks that signature, if he realizes what they did, he might cancel the engagement before Saturday." "He might," I agreed. "Is that what you want?" I thought about Sienna. I thought about her crying on Instagram, using my pain to gain sympathy, using my stolen equity to buy her way into a family that would never truly accept her. "I don't want to ruin her life," I said, "but she built her castle on a foundation of theft. If the ground crumbles, that is not my fault." "It is just gravity," Grant nodded. "Gravity it is. Get some rest. Riley, you have a big weekend ahead of you." The screen went black. I lay back in the bed. The pain in my spine was a dull roar, but my mind was clear. I looked at the folder on my phone, evidence_social. I looked at the text thread with Miles, which remained silent. I knew what was coming. The injunction would hit. The money would freeze. My parents would panic. They would come here, to the hospital, to scream and beg and threaten. They would try to force me to lift the hold, but they didn't know about the second envelope. They didn't know that the money was just the opening act. The gala wasn't the end of the story. The gala was just the place where I would finally unlock the door to the truth and show them exactly who owned the house they had been living in. I closed my eyes and waited for the chaos to begin. The restaurant was called the Gilded Anchor. It was exactly the kind of place my parents loved. Dark wood paneling, waiters in white tuxedos, and menu prices that were inversely proportional to the portion sizes. It was the sort of place where you paid for the privilege of whispering. I arrived 12 minutes late. This was not an accident. I wanted them to be seated. I wanted the drinks to be poured. I wanted them to be comfortable before I reminded them that their comfort was a lie. I did not have a wheelchair. I refused to enter that room at eye level with their belt buckles. Instead, I had a pair of forearm crutches that Grant had arranged for me. They were sleek, titanium, and black. They looked less like medical equipment and more like weapons. The maitre d' tried to guide me to the elevator. But I took the stairs. It was agony. Every step was a fresh negotiation with my fused spine. The pain radiated from my lower back down to my heels. Hot and electric, but I needed the pain. The pain kept me sharp. It reminded me that while they were sipping Pinot Noir, I was stitching myself back together. When I reached the private dining room, I paused at the heavy oak doors. I could hear them inside. My father's booming laugh, Sienna's high-pitched giggle, the clink of silverware. They sounded happy. They sounded like a family that hadn't just committed a felony against one of their own. I pushed the door open. The room went silent instantly. It was as if someone had sucked all the oxygen out of the space. My father, Dale, was mid-anecdote, his hand raised with a glass of scotch. He froze. My mother, Marlene, dropped her fork. It hit the china plate with a sharp clatter that echoed like a gunshot. Sienna, seated next to Miles, looked at me with a mixture of fear and annoyance, as if I were a stain on her white silk dress. Only Miles moved. He stood up immediately, his chair scraping against the floor. "Riley," he said, his voice genuine. He looked at my crutches, then at my face. "I didn't think you would make it. Are you okay to be standing?" "I am fine, Miles," I said. My voice was raspy, but it didn't shake. I would not miss the rehearsal dinner. "Sit down," my mother hissed. She had recovered from her shock and was now in damage control mode. She stood up and rushed over to me, grabbing my elbow. Her grip was tight, her fingernails digging into my skin, to the room. It looked like a mother helping her injured daughter. To me, it felt like a prison guard restraining an inmate. "You are making a spectacle. Sit down before you fall over." "I am not going to fall. Mother," I said, pulling my arm away. "I am quite stable." I made my way to the empty chair at the far end of the table. The tapping of my crutches on the hardwood floor was the only sound in the room. Clack, step, clack, step. I sat down slowly, wincing as my back adjusted to the angle. "Well," my father said, clearing his throat. He forced a smile that looked like a rictus of pain. "We are glad you could join us. Riley, we were just telling Miles about the preparations for tomorrow." "I bet you were," I said. I picked up the linen napkin and unfolded it on my lap. "Did you tell him about the funding?" My father's eyes narrowed. There was a warning in them, cold and absolute. "Shut up," his eyes said. "Do not ruin this." "We were discussing the family legacy," he said, emphasizing the word family. "Speaking of which, I would like to propose a toast." He stood up again. He looked the part of the patriarch perfectly. Silver hair, tailored suit, a Rolex that I knew was a high-end replica he bought in Chinatown. "To my beautiful daughter, Sienna," he began, beaming at her. "And to Miles. Tomorrow night is not just a party, it is a declaration. It is the Jenkins family showing the world that we stand behind our children. We have made sacrifices to get here, big sacrifices." He looked directly at me when he said it. "But that is what parents do," he continued, his voice trembling with manufactured emotion. "We give everything we have. We liquidate our own comfort to ensure the next generation thrives. We don't hold back. We don't count the cost." It was a masterclass in gaslighting. He was rewriting the theft of my home as a noble act of parental martyrdom. He was telling Miles that the money from the condo wasn't stolen. It was a generous gift that I was too selfish to appreciate. To sacrifice, Miles said, raising his glass. But he didn't drink immediately. He was looking at me over the rim of his crystal tumbler. To sacrifice, I echoed. I picked up my water glass. And to the paperwork that makes it possible. Sienna let out a sharp breath. Riley, please, just eat your salad. The salad looks delicious, I said pleasantly. Did you choose the menu, Sienna, or did Prestige Coastal Events handle it? At the mention of the event planner, my mother flinched. She knocked over the salt shaker. Prestige has been wonderful, Sienna said loudly, her voice shrill. Everything is perfect. The donor wall is going to be amazing. They sent the mock-up today. The Jenkins family is right at the top, in gold leaf. It is going to look so good next to the Crowley name. Miles. She turned to her fiancé. Desperate for validation, she grabbed his hand and squeezed it. It proves we are equals, right? That we are partners? Miles looked down at her hand, then back up at me. Equals, he said. That is an interesting word. The dinner progressed in a series of agonizingly slow courses. The air was thick with unspoken threats. Every time I reached for my water, my mother tracked the movement as if I were reaching for a grenade. Every time I cleared my throat, my father stiffened. They were terrified. Grant had filed the injunction that afternoon. They knew the money was frozen. They knew the checks were bouncing, but they couldn't scream at me because Miles was sitting right there. They had to pretend everything was fine. They had to smile and eat their filet mignon while their world was crumbling silently beneath the table. It was the most delicious meal I had ever eaten. Halfway through the main course, I excused myself to use the restroom. It was a lie. I just needed to stand up to relieve the pressure on my spine. I maneuvered my crutches toward the hallway. I wasn't surprised when I heard footsteps behind me. I expected my father, or my mother, but when I turned around in the quiet corridor, it was Miles. He looked out of place in the dimly lit hallway. He looked tired. The polish of the politician in training was gone, replaced by the weary look of a man who realized he had bought a ticket to a show he didn't want to see. Riley, he said. He kept his distance, respectful of my injury. Miles, I said, you should go back inside. Sienna gets anxious if you leave her alone for too long. I checked the hospital logs, he said. He didn't waste time with small talk. I have a friend on the board at Clearwater General, Miles continued, his voice low. I asked him to check the timestamp on your surgery intake and discharge. You went under anesthesia at 7 in the morning on the 30th. You didn't wake up until 4 in the afternoon. I leaned on my crutches, watching him. And the deed transfer for your condo was notarized at 9:30 in the morning, Miles said. In Alabama. He looked at me, waiting for me to explain, waiting for me to give him an alternative fact. That is weird, I said simply. It is not weird, Riley. It is impossible, Miles said. He took a step closer. Unless you have a twin I don't know about. You didn't sign those papers, which means your parents did. That is a heavy accusation, Miles, I said. They are your future in-laws. They are the people putting their name in gold leaf next to yours. I know what they are, Miles said. He ran a hand through his hair. I have suspected for a long time that they were living beyond their means. But this is criminal. If this comes out, it won't just hurt them. It will blow back on my family. The Crowleys cannot be associated with fraud. Then you have a decision to make, I said. Why haven't you gone to the police? He asked. Why are you at dinner eating steak with people who robbed you? Because the police write reports, I said. I write endings. Miles stared at me. He looked a little frightened. Good. Do you want me to stop it? He asked. I can cancel the gala. I can pull the plug right now. No, I said instantly. Do not cancel the gala. Why not? Because they need to be on that stage, I said. They need to be standing in the spotlight when the bill comes due. If you cancel it now, they get to play the victim in private. They get to spin the story. I need them public. Miles, I need them exposed. You want me to walk into an ambush, he realized. I want you to see exactly who you are marrying, I corrected him. If I tell you everything right now, here in this hallway, they will tell you I am on painkillers. They will tell you I am jealous. They will tell you I am crazy. But tomorrow there will be paper, and paper doesn't lie. Miles was silent for a long moment. He looked at the door of the private dining room, then back at me. Okay, he said. I will wait for the paper. Smart man, I said. We walked back into the dining room separately. When I sat down, the tension ratcheted up another notch. My mother was glaring at me, convinced I had just spilled the family secrets. What were you talking about? Sienna whispered aggressively as soon as Miles went to the bar to get a fresh drink. Why were you talking to him? He asked me how my back was feeling, I lied. Don't lie to me, Sienna snapped. You are trying to poison him against me. You are jealous because I'm getting everything you never could. I looked at my sister. She was beautiful. Yes, but up close, under the harsh chandelier light. She looked brittle. She looked like a porcelain doll that had been glued back together too many times. She was 32 years old, and she had never paid a bill in her life. She was a child playing house in a mansion built on quicksand. I am not jealous, Sienna, I said quietly. I am actually prepared. I reached into my purse. It was a small movement, but it made everyone at the table freeze. My father stopped chewing. My mother's hand hovered over her wine glass. I pulled out a small, black velvet box. It was the size of a ring box. I slid it across the white tablecloth toward Sienna. What is this? She asked, eyeing it suspiciously. A gift, I said. For tomorrow. I don't want your gifts, she said, but her hand reached out for it anyway. Greed was a reflex she couldn't control. Don't open it now, I said, placing my hand over hers to stop her. Open it tomorrow, right before you go on stage. Think of it as a good luck charm. Is it jewelry? She asked, her eyes lighting up. Is it Grandma's sapphire? It is something much more valuable than a sapphire, I said. It is perspective. I removed my hand. Sienna snatched the box and dropped it into her clutch, a smug smile spreading across her face. She thought she had won. She thought I was trying to buy my way back into her good graces. Well, she said, at least you are trying to make an effort. Thank you. Riley? You are welcome, I said. The dinner ended 30 minutes later. We walked out into the cool night air. The valet brought my father's car around, a leased Mercedes that was 3 months behind on payments. According to the file Grant had sent me, Miles helped Sienna into his car. He didn't look back at me. He was playing his part. My parents lingered on the curb while I waited for my Uber. My father walked over to me. He loomed over me, using his height to intimidate, unaware that I had spent the last 4 years being the giant in this relationship. He leaned down, his breath smelling of expensive scotch and rot. I don't know what game you're playing, he whispered, his voice a low growl. I don't know what you told Miles, but listen to me carefully. He gripped the handle of my crutch, his fingers digging into the metal. Tomorrow night is the most important night of our lives. If you do anything at all, to embarrass this family, you will regret it. I will make sure you never see a dime of that money. I will bury you in legal fees. I will ruin you. You already ruined me. Dad, I said, looking him straight in the eye. You sold my house. I saved this family, he hissed. Now, tomorrow, you are going to sit at table 19. You are going to smile. You are going to clap. And you are going to keep your mouth shut. Do you understand? I looked at him. I looked at the fear behind the aggression. I looked at a man who was fighting for his life and didn't even realize the war was already over. I understand, I said. I will be there. He let go of my crutch with a sneer, straightened his jacket, and walked away. "Get home safe," he called out loudly for the benefit of the valet. "We love you." I watched them drive away. The Uber pulled up. I struggled into the back seat, arranging my legs carefully. The driver asked me if I wanted the radio on. I told him no. I wanted silence. I touched the pocket of my blazer. Inside was the envelope Grant had given me, the lease termination, the proof of ownership. Sienna had her black box. My parents had their delusion, and I had the truth. My father had told me to sit still and watch. He had told me the family would be looking. I looked out the window at the passing city lights, a dark smile touching my lips. "Yes, Dad," I whispered to the empty car. "They will be looking, and for the first time in your life, they are going to see exactly who you are." The venue was the Azalea Grand, a boutique hotel in the heart of Savannah's historic district that smelled of old money, beeswax, and lilies. It was the kind of place where the air conditioning was set to a temperature that required a cashmere shawl, and the lighting was designed to smooth out wrinkles and hide sins. Tonight, the sins were hiding in plain sight. I sat at table 19, in the geography of high society galas. Table 19 is Siberia. It was positioned directly next to the swinging doors of the kitchen service entrance. Every 40 seconds, a burst of noise and the smell of seared scallops would wash over me, drowning out the string quartet playing softly in the corner. I did not mind. From here, I had a panoramic view of the battlefield. The room was a sea of black ties and silk gowns. The centerpiece of the evening was a massive gold donor wall erected in the lobby, but a digital projection of it was currently displayed on the stage behind the podium. There, glowing in bold, serif font, was the name, the Jenkins family. It was listed in the platinum tier, right above the local neurosurgery practice and just below a shipping magnate. My parents were holding court at table 1. The prime real estate next to the dance floor, they looked magnificent. My father, Dale, was wearing a tuxedo that fit him better than his conscience. My mother, Marlene, was draped in emerald satin, a color that brought out the greed in her eyes. They were laughing, clinking crystal flutes with the Crowleys, looking every inch the philanthropic pillars of the community. To anyone watching, they were the picture of benevolent success. To me, they looked like two people wearing my bank account as a costume. I took a sip of water. My throat was dry, not from nerves, but from the sheer, suffocating weight of the hypocrisy in the room. I adjusted my position in the chair, wincing as the movement sent a fresh spike of pain through my fused vertebrae. The crutches were leaning against the table, black and ominous, like rifles waiting to be fired. The master of ceremonies, a local news anchor with teeth that were too white and a tan that was too orange, took the stage. He tapped the microphone, and the room fell into a polite, expectant hush. "Ladies and gentlemen," his voice boomed, smooth as caramel, "tonight is a night of generosity. Tonight is a night where we show what this community is made of, and no one exemplifies that spirit more than our platinum sponsors." He gestured to the screen. "I want to give a special recognition to a family that has stepped up in a major way this year. Please join me in applauding Dale and Marlene Jenkins and the entire Jenkins family for their incredible contribution to the Coastal Heritage Foundation." The applause was thunderous. It was a wave of validation that washed over my parents, cleansing them of their mediocrity. I watched my father stand up, waving to the crowd with a humility that was as fake as the signature on my deed. My mother dabbed at her dry eyes with a handkerchief, performing the role of the overwhelmed matriarch to perfection. Sienna was beaming. She sat next to Miles, her hand resting conspicuously on his arm, her engagement ring catching the light. She looked like she had won. She looked like she believed the lie. Then, the script changed. My mother leaned over and whispered something to the MC. He nodded, smiling broadly. "And you know," the MC continued, improvising, "generosity is a family tradition. Marlene has just informed me that their daughter, Riley, discharged from major spinal surgery only 3 days ago, made the effort to be here tonight to support her sister and this cause, Where is Riley? The spotlight swept the room. It bypassed the VIP tables, the gold tables, the silver tables, and finally landed on me. Sitting alone by the kitchen door, the light was blinding. I blinked against the glare. "Come on up here, Riley!" My mother's voice rang out. She had taken a handheld microphone from a server. She was standing by the stage, beckoning me with a smile that was all teeth. "Come share a few words about what this night means to our family." It was a trap, a beautiful, vicious trap. She knew I couldn't walk easily. She knew I hated public speaking, but more than that, she was forcing a public submission. If I refused, I looked like the bitter, invalid sister who couldn't be happy for her family. If I went up there and played along, I was complicit. She was betting that social pressure would force me to limp up to that stage, smile, and validate their theft. She wanted me to kiss the ring in front of 200 witnesses. The room turned to look at me. Hundreds of eyes. I could see the pity in some, the curiosity in others. I looked at my mother. She gave me a tiny, imperceptible nod. Checkmate, her eyes said. I reached for my crutches. The sound of the metal clicking against the floor was amplified by the silence of the room. I stood up slowly. It took effort. It took grit. I straightened my back. Ignoring the scream of my muscles, I did not smile. I began to walk. It was a long walk. The path from table 19 to the stage felt like a mile. Clack, step, drag, clack, step, drag. The rhythm was hypnotic. I saw Miles watching me. His face was unreadable, but he wasn't clapping. He was studying me, remembering the conversation in the hallway the night before. Wait for the paper, I had told him. I reached the stairs of the stage. The MC rushed down to help me, offering an arm. I accepted it. Hoisting myself up the 3 steps, I stood center stage, the lights hot on my face. My parents were standing just to my left, glowing with pride. My mother handed me the microphone. "We are so proud of you, honey," she whispered, loud enough for the front row to hear. I took the mic. It was heavy. I looked out at the crowd. I saw the faces of Savannah's elite, bankers, lawyers, developers, people who understood money, people who understood contracts. "Thank you," I said. My voice was low, steady, and stripped of all emotion. My mother is right. This is an important night for the Jenkins family. It is a night about value and cost. My father nodded encouragingly, thinking I was sticking to the script. My parents have been praised for their donation of $425,000, I continued. It is a significant number. It is a life-changing number. I reached into the inside pocket of my blazer, but in the spirit of transparency, which this foundation values so highly, I think it is important to clarify where that donation came from. I pulled out a single sheet of paper. It was not the speech my mother had likely hoped for. It was a high-resolution photocopy of the power of attorney document Grant had pulled from the county records. "This," I said, holding the paper up to the light, "is the legal document that authorized the sale of the asset that funded this evening. It is a power of attorney, granting my parents the right to sell my home, my condominium at 421 Bayview, and liquidate my savings." The room was quiet. People were leaning in, sensing a shift in the wind. My father's smile faltered. He took a half-step toward me. "Riley," he warned, his voice a low rumble. I ignored him. I turned to the crowd. "You can see the signature here at the bottom," I said, pointing to the scrawl. "It is dated January 30th. The timestamp from the remote notary in Alabama is 9:30 in the morning." I paused. I let the time hang in the air. "Now," I said, my voice dropping an octave, becoming intimate and cold. At 9:30 in the morning on January 30th, I was 2 hours into a 9-hour spinal fusion surgery at Clearwater General Hospital. A gasp rippled through the room. It started at the front tables and spread backward like a wave. "I was under general anesthesia," I said. "I was intubated. I was incapable of speaking, moving, or signing a legal document." I turned to look at my parents. They were frozen. My mother's face had gone the color of ash. My father looked like he had been struck by a hammer. "So," I said, turning back to the audience, "I have a question for the business leaders in this room. I have a question for the bankers. I have a question for the lawyers." I held the paper higher. "If a signature is executed while the signatory is unconscious on an operating table, and if the proceeds of that sale are immediately transferred to a third-party vendor to pay for a party," I looked directly at Miles Crowley. "Do you call that a donation?" I asked. "Or do you call it grand larceny?" The silence that followed was not the silence of politeness. It was the silence of a bomb that had just landed but hadn't detonated yet. It was the vacuum before the explosion. "Riley!" Sienna screamed. My sister broke the paralysis. She launched herself from her chair. Her face twisted in a mask of pure, animalistic panic. She hiked up her white dress and lunged toward the stage. "Give me that!" she shrieked, scrambling up the stairs. "She is lying. She is on drugs. Turn off the mic." She reached for me, her hands clawing for the paper, but she never reached me. A hand shot out and grabbed her wrist. It wasn't my father. It wasn't security. It was Miles. He had moved with a speed I didn't know he possessed. He caught her arm mid-swing, jerking her back. It wasn't a gentle hold. It was a restraint. "Miles!" Sienna cried, looking at him in shock. "Let me go. She is ruining everything." Miles didn't look at her. He was looking at me. He was looking at the paper in my hand. His face was pale, his jaw set in a hard line. He wasn't looking at a jealous sister anymore. He was looking at a witness. "Let her finish," Miles said. His voice was quiet, but in the dead silence of the room, it carried to the back wall. My father made a noise, a strangled sound of protest, but he didn't move. He sensed the mood of the room turning against him. He saw the way the wealthy patrons were whispering, pulling out their phones, checking the dates I had mentioned. I looked at Sienna, held back by the man she wanted to marry. I looked at my parents, shrinking under the spotlight they had coveted so desperate. I lowered the microphone slightly. "I am not going to press charges tonight," I said. "I am not going to call the police to this ballroom because I believe in finishing what we start." I tucked the power of attorney back into my pocket. "You took my money to buy this applause," I said to my parents. "So enjoy it, listen to it, because it cost you $425,000. I grabbed my crutches and adjusted my grip. I looked at my father one last time. "That was the accounting for the cash," I said. "But we still have one more account to settle." I took a step toward the stairs, then paused, delivering the final line over my shoulder. "That was the money, the house, that gets delivered tomorrow morning." I didn't wait for a response. I began the long, painful walk down the stairs. The spotlight followed me, but the room remained dead silent. There was no applause. There was no music. There was only the sound of my crutches, counting down the seconds until the sun came up. Behind me, I heard my mother sob. It was a real sob this time. It was the sound of a woman realizing that the ground she was standing on was about to open up and swallow her whole. The gala wasn't over, but the Jenkins family was. The morning after the gala, the sky over Georgia was a bruised purple, heavy with rain that refused to fall. I sat in the living room of the house in Lakemont. My back was stiff, supported by a brace and 3 pillows on the armchair I had positioned facing the front door. Grant sat on the sofa to my right, his laptop open, 2 thick manila envelopes resting on the coffee table between us. We were waiting. My parents and Sienna arrived at 10 o'clock sharp. They pulled into the driveway in the rental car, slamming the doors with the aggressive energy of people who believed they were the victims of a misunderstanding. They marched up the steps, and when they opened the door, they didn't look like people who had been exposed as thieves 12 hours prior. They looked like parents coming to discipline an unruly child. "There she is," my mother said, dropping her purse on the entryway table. She was wearing sunglasses indoors, likely to hide the puffiness from a night of crying, but her voice was steady. "We need to talk. Riley, immediately. Do you have any idea the humiliation you caused last night? Miles left without saying a word to Sienna. The Crowleys are not answering our calls. Sit down, Grant said. He didn't stand up. He didn't offer them coffee. His voice was a flat line. Who are you? My father demanded. Stepping into the room. He looked older than he had on stage. The gray in his hair seemed sharper, his skin sallow. Is this the man filling your head with this nonsense? I am Grant Holloway, Grant said. I am Riley's attorney. And you are going to sit down because if you don't, the sheriff deputy parked down the street is going to come in and escort you to the county jail. The threat hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. My father's jaw worked, grinding his teeth. But he sat down on the love seat. My mother and Sienna squeezed in beside him. They looked like a tribunal of judges who had suddenly found themselves in the dock. We are here to fix this, my mother said, pivoting to her script. She looked at me with a pitying expression that made my stomach turn. Grant, you need to understand. Riley has been on heavy narcotics for her back. She is confused. She thinks we stole from her, but we were acting as her proxies. We have a durable power of attorney. We were going to pay her back with interest once the wedding gifts came in. Riley is not confused, Grant said. And neither is the state of Florida. He reached for the first envelope. He slid it across the coffee table. It hit the wood with a heavy thud. That contains a copy of the criminal complaint filed this morning, Grant said. It outlines 3 counts of forgery, 1 count of wire fraud, and 1 count of grand larceny in the first degree. We have the metadata from the remote notary session. We know you used a pre-recorded video loop to bypass the identity check. We know you traced Riley's signature from an old birthday card. My father scoffed, waving a hand dismissively. You are bluffing. You wouldn't send your own parents to prison. You are just trying to scare us into giving you a cut of the money. I am not scaring you. Dad, I said. It was the first time I had spoken. My voice was quiet. I am reading the law to you. You ungrateful brat, my father snarled, lunging forward slightly. We fed you, we housed you, and you threaten us? I am not threatening, I said. I am accounting. Grant raised a hand to stop him. The funds you wired to Prestige Coastal Events have been frozen, he said. The injunction was granted late last night. You cannot access that $425,000. Neither can the event planner. It sits in a court-controlled escrow account until the criminal case is resolved. So, Sienna, if you were planning on using that cash to start your new life, you are starting at zero. Sienna let out a sharp cry. You can't do that. That is my wedding money. Miles and I need that for the down payment. Miles is not buying a house with you, Grant said. Which brings us to the second matter. He picked up the second envelope. This one was thinner. Your housing situation, Grant said. My mother frowned. What does this house have to do with the condo? We rent this place. We have a lease with a holding company. We pay our rent every month. You can't touch this. Harbor Lint Holdings, LLC, I said. My mother looked at me. Yes, Harbor Lint, a very reputable investment firm. Your father has a great relationship with them. Dad has never spoken to Harbor Lint Holdings, I said. Because Harbor Lint Holdings is a shell company. So what? My father sneered. Lots of landlords are shell companies. What is your point? Grant slid the second envelope across the table. It sat on top of the criminal complaint. This is a notice of non-renewal and termination of lease, Grant said. Effective immediately. You have 30 days to vacate the premises. They can't do that, my father shouted, his face turning red. We have rights. We have been model tenants. I will call the management office right now. I will tell them my daughter is harassing us. Go ahead, I said. Call them. My father pulled out his phone. He dialed the number he had saved for the property manager. My phone, sitting on the armrest of my chair, began to ring. The sound filled the room, a generic, cheerful ringtone. My father looked at his phone. He looked at my phone. He looked at me. He didn't understand. His brain refused to make the connection. He ended the call. My phone stopped ringing. He dialed again. My phone rang again. I picked it up. I pressed the green button. I put it to my ear. "Hello, Mr. Jenkins?" I said into the phone, watching his face. "This is Harborlint Holdings. How can I help you?" The color drained from my father's face so fast, it looked like he had been bled dry. The phone slipped from his fingers and landed on the rug. "No," he whispered. "No." My mother looked back and forth between us, panic rising in her chest. "What? What is it, Dale?" "She owns it," my father choked out. "She owns the house." "What?" My mother turned to me, her eyes wide. "You? But we have been paying rent for 4 years. We pay $1,800 a month." "Yes," I said. "You do. And every single check you sent went into a savings account in my name. I used it to pay the property taxes and the insurance. I bought this house 4 years ago when the bank was going to foreclose on you. I bought it so you wouldn't be homeless. I created the LLC so you wouldn't feel embarrassed about living in your daughter's house." I leaned forward, fighting the pain in my spine. "I saved you," I said. "I saved you when you were drowning, and how did you repay me? You waited until I was unconscious, and you stole the only other thing I had." The room was silent. The only sound was Sienna's ragged breathing. "So," Grant said, his voice cutting through the shock like a scalpel, "the landlord is exercising her right to terminate the tenancy due to criminal activity against the property owner. You have 30 days. That is the statutory minimum in Georgia. It is more than you deserve. But Riley insists on following the letter of the law." "30 days?" my mother whispered. "But where will we go? Our credit is ruined. We have no savings." "You have the income from your pension, Dad," I said. "It is enough for a small apartment. It is enough for a life you can actually afford." "And Sienna?" my mother asked, clutching my sister's hand. "She is about to be married to a Crowley. She can't live in an apartment." "About that," Grant said. He opened his laptop and turned the screen around. It was an email from Miles Crowley's attorney. It had been sent at 6 a.m. "To whom it may concern. Mr. Crowley is formally rescinding his proposal of marriage to Miss Sienna Jenkins. Furthermore, a forensic audit of Mr. Crowley's personal devices has revealed multiple unauthorized attempts to access his banking applications using passwords that were shared in confidence with Ms. Jenkins. We are declining to press charges at this time to avoid further publicity, but all contact must cease immediately." Sienna stared at the screen. She didn't scream this time. She just crumpled. She slumped back against the sofa cushions, looking small and defeated. It wasn't the public embarrassment that had driven Miles away. It was the realization that the theft wasn't an isolated incident. It was a family pathology. Sienna had been trying to hack his accounts just as my parents had hacked my life. "He knows," Sienna whispered. "He knows," I confirmed. My father looked up at me. His eyes were wet. For a second, I thought he might apologize. I thought he might say, "I am sorry. We lost our way." "You planned this," he said instead, his voice trembling with hate. "You set us up. You let us pay rent to you for years just so you could pull the rug out from under us today. You are a monster." I looked at him. I felt nothing. No anger, no sadness, just a profound, quiet relief. "I didn't plan for you to steal from me, Dad," I said. "I planned for you to have a home. You are the one who decided that wasn't enough." I pointed to the door. "Get out," I said. "Riley, please," my mother begged, tears streaming down her face. "We are your family." "I know," I said. "That is why I am giving you 30 days. A stranger would have given you 3. Grant stood up. "The clock starts now," he said. "If you are not out by midnight on the 1st of March, the sheriff will execute the eviction. Leave the keys on the counter." They left. They didn't slam the door this time. They walked out slowly, hunched over, carrying the weight of their own choices. I watched them get into the rental car. I watched them drive away down the wet street. When the car disappeared around the bend, I let out a breath I felt like I had been holding for 20 years. "Are you okay?" Grant asked, sitting back down. I hurt, I said. My back hurts. My head hurts. But your wallet? Grant asked with a small smile. My wallet is recovering, I said. The next few months were a blur of legal paperwork and physical therapy. We settled the criminal case. My parents pleaded no contest to a lesser charge of fraud to avoid jail time. But the felony conviction went on their record. They were forced to pay restitution, which meant the frozen funds were returned to me, minus the legal fees. They moved into a 2-bedroom apartment in a neighboring town. Sienna moved in with them. I heard she got a job as a receptionist at a dental office. It is honest work. I hope she learns to value the paycheck. I sold the house in Lakemont. I couldn't keep it. It held too many ghosts. I sold the condo in Clearwater to Sienna's manager, Chloe. Tried to fight for it, claiming she was a valid buyer. But once the police started investigating her flipping ring, she folded. The sale was voided, and I sold it properly to a young couple who actually wanted to live there, with the money from the condo and the sale of the Georgia house. I had a significant sum. I could have bought a mansion. I could have bought a boat. Instead, I bought a small cottage on the outskirts of Savannah. It has a garden. It has a porch where I can sit and drink coffee. It is small, but it is mine. I took the rest of the money, the rent my parents had paid me over 4 years, and I started a foundation. It is called the Signature Fund. We provide legal aid and emergency housing grants for victims of familial financial abuse. We help people who wake up to find their credit ruined by their parents. We help people who have had their names signed to loans they never asked for. I help them get their names back, sometimes late at night. I look at the scar on my back in the bathroom mirror. It is a long, thin line, a reminder of the day I was cut open. It used to make me angry. Now, it just reminds me of what it cost to get free. They called me selfish for wanting to keep what I earned. They called me cruel for evicting them. But I learned something important in that hospital bed. You cannot light yourself on fire to keep other people warm, especially if they are the ones holding the matches. I didn't take revenge. I didn't ruin them. I simply returned the consequences of their actions to the rightful owners. My name is Riley Jenkins. This is my house. This is my life. And from now on, the only person who signs for me is me. Thank you so much for listening to my story on the Lucy Revenge Stories channel. I would love to know where you are tuning in from. So please drop a comment with your city or country below. Hit that like button and smash the hype button to help this story reach more people who might need to hear it.